Welcome to the Snodgrass podcast. I am super excited to have you guys on the show with me today. I got a good friend of mine, Brandon Rickman, out of Atlanta, Georgia. Brandon is a real estate investor, but we're going to be talking today about the importance of community. And we're going to be talking about this epidemic of male loneliness and how we can solve this problem of male brotherhood community. You guys are not going to want to miss this with this episode with Brandon Rickman. So check that out. Make sure you guys go over to our new website, irondeep.com. Speaking of community, this is why we're having Iron Deep, and we're having our very first retreat September the 25th of 2022 in Timber Lakes, Utah. We rented out a 26,000 square foot log cabin. We're going to have max 30 men. I think we got like 8 spots open, so make sure you guys go over to check that out at irondeep.com and apply for our new community of Iron Deep. And also go over to YouTube and check out our YouTube channel, the Iron Deep YouTube channel, and we just launched a brand new video on pride and how it is a cancer to the soul. So go check that out as well. So now, I cannot wait to introduce you to my good friend, Brandon Rickman.
Hey, Brett. How's it going?
It's going fantastic, man. Thanks for joining me on the podcast today. Super excited. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. Social, personal, professional, whatever, man. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. Today, guys, we're really going to just be diving into a certain topic because when I think about community, brotherhood, thinking about, and Brandon, you gave a presentation on this one time about the importance of being in community, and I've been doing a lot of research on this. Obviously, that's where we're doing this new venture with Iron Deep, and just the importance of especially men belonging to a community. We're going to be diving into that, guys, so stay tuned for that. But Brandon, before I start talking about the community, man, I just want to get a little flavor of you. So who's Brandon Rickman?
Well, first of all, I would say I'm a follower of Jesus. So that's the most important part of who I am. I am a husband. I've been married for almost 21 years now to Kelly, and we have a 12-year-old son. So I'm a father. And then professionally, I am in the real estate world. So we flip houses and wholesale houses and buy and hold rental properties as well. So we're based about 30 miles outside of Atlanta, northwest of Atlanta in Marietta, Georgia. And that's where we do most of our deals is in and around the Atlanta market.
Yeah, definitely. So Brandon and I, we do a very similar business, flip houses, wholesale houses. And Brandon, how long have you been doing this?
Well, my dad was a builder when I was growing up. So I've been in real estate and construction for my whole life. When I was a kid in middle school, in the summer and on weekends, we'd go clean out houses that he was building. So I've been involved in real estate and construction for my whole life, but did new construction for a while from 2004 until 2009 when the market took a little nosedive, and then came back around in 2014 and started focusing exclusively then on flipping and wholesaling and not doing as much new construction.
Yeah, definitely, man. And so what's your crystal ball with the market coming around? So this is I'm going to put you on the spot, man. Everybody's talking about this a little bit, and we just got it done from Mastermind. They were talking about, is the market going to correct? Is it going to go through in a recession? What's your take on it?
Yeah, it's funny. I get asked that question by everybody who finds out that I'm in real estate. Like, okay, tell us the secret. What's about to happen?
Right.
So I think, my opinion, and it's just my opinion, but I think with interest rates rising, that limits the amount of buyers who can buy properties. For the last couple of years, properties have been appreciating so much. You had a lot of newbie flippers and beginners who were getting into the game and doing really well. Also, buy and hold investors were buying a lot of rental properties to hold on to because rent rates were going up. I think as interest rates have climbed, they've almost doubled in the last couple of months. That limits the amount of people who can afford certainly to buy and hold properties, and people who are willing to, take tighter margins on their flips. So I think we're going to see a pullback. I think right now we're seeing it on our side because we're in it every day. And so we're starting to feel some of the initial causes of a slowdown. I don't think the general public sees it yet. I think they will once the news media picks it up and starts talking about the slowdown. But I think with inflation going up and with interest rates going up, I think we're going to see a slowdown. I don't expect it to be as bad as it was in 08, 09, which we were in business at that time, and it was terrible. but I think there was a lot of banking issues at that time as well that we don't have now. So I think we'll see a correction. I think it'll get back to what normal real estate is, and it won't be this, crazy fast appreciation like we've seen over the last couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. Time will tell. So we're gonna see what's happening in the next few years. It's gonna be exciting. It's gonna be an adventure. We're all ready for it. So Brandon, as I mentioned before we started talking about you in real estate, is just this kid's gonna be themed around the importance of community. And I was reading an article in Mind Journal, and it talks about the silent epidemic of male loneliness, and had some stats in there that basically 1 in 5 admit to having no friends. 1 in 3 say they can't count on anyone as a best friend. And 44% of men, so nearly half of men, they feel lonely, either sometimes, often, or all the time. So it's a big problem, male loneliness, especially as business owners. Sometimes we feel like we always have to be on our game, have it all together. So can you talk about just that a little bit, about your own experience? What do you see out there of this article, this epidemic, of this silent epidemic of male loneliness?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that article. I think if you ask men in general, how many close friends they have, and I mean, best friends, or people who know their family well, know their kids, know their business, what they're doing, who really know each other well. I think most men go through life with, 1 to 3 at a maximum of people that are close to them, really close to them. And most of them, the majority of men, when you ask that question, don't have anybody. And so I've experienced that in my life. Certainly, like you said, as a business leader, starting companies and running companies, you have different things to discuss. You have different issues than a lot of people do who work for other companies. And so it's even more lonely for those of us who run businesses. And I think it's a difficult place to be. I think we need community. We need other people in our life. We need people who know us and love us and want what's best for us. All do, men and women, but women generally are better at finding community and spending time together and, talking through important issues. Whereas guys are more like, yeah, let's go get some wings and, watch the Braves game.
Yeah.
And just kind of stay on a surface level. They don't really let people in too deep. And, God didn't put us on earth by ourselves. He didn't put us on an island by ourselves. I think he intended us to live in community with other people. And it's dangerous to be, without any community, without anybody who can help you. Scripture says a man's ways are right in his own mind. And it also says that our heart is deceitful above all other things. So, if my heart naturally has a tendency to do things that are worldly and not focused on God and what he wants me to do, and I don't have anybody else who can help direct me in the right path, then, you put those two things together and it's just the natural tendency that you're going to slide, down a hill. And so I think it's lonely, and it's vitally important to have people in your life who are willing to kind of step in and help you, help point out some of your blind spots.
Yeah. It's very interesting that you say our heart is, it just has that natural instinct to go towards what the world wants, that our flesh desires, want to be our own God, and that we drift. Like I was listening to a speaker one time says, we never drift towards God, right? We never just, I'm just going through life, just going through the motions, and I just end up close and intimate with the Father. It just never happens. You never drift that way. We drift the opposite way. It's like in a boat. If you lay down in your boat for a little bit and then you get up and look around, you drifted to, you don't even know where you're at. I think that was Levi Lusko, who's, I don't know if that's the same quote that you read from Levi Lusko, but he said that. He said, we always drift and we never drift where we want to go. Yeah.
So it takes intentionality and focus, to get where you want to go.
Exactly. So let's maybe just talk about your own life. Was there ever a time where you felt like you didn't have community, where you lacked community, that maybe you were going through something that you didn't have any other men or friends to kind of lean on?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say most of my life was like that. Certainly until my early 30s, mid 30s. I think, growing up through high school, we had, we had friends, and we hung out together. And then certainly in college I did. But then after college, you're kind of getting into, you're trying to figure out what your career is. I don't know that most people settle into that until they're a little bit older, but you're working, you're trying to pay your bills, you're trying to find what you want to do, you're trying to pay for a house, trying to get married. You just have so many other things that you're focused on. And it's certainly when you do get married and have kids, that makes it even more difficult, because it's not very common that men and women as couples find other couples that they're really close to. The male might be close to the other male, and the wives don't get along real well, or vice versa. So from what I've seen, working with a lot of young married couples, they, including myself, they try to find other couples that they can do life with, and it very rarely works that way.
Interesting.
So yeah, so it usually ends up, if they do find community, it's like I said, I think women generally find community easier. I think men kind of drift along between work and husband and father and watching a ball game once in a while, and they just kind of drift through life like that. For me, it just got to the point where, making bad decisions, and nothing that was too far off the rails, but just not making wise decisions, ending up in bad places with business. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I really needed someone or people in my life who could say, hey, have you thought about this? What about this? What do you think about this option? And they're not really telling you what to do, but they're giving you different perspectives. And I think that's the best way to make any major decision, is to get feedback from 4, 5, 6, 10, trusted people, trusted advisors, or family members, whoever you get advice from, and then take all that information, think through it, pray through it, and then make the best decision possible. And you can't do that if you're operating on your own.
Yeah, no, definitely. So was there a point in your own life you kind of had, you go out with your buddies and you try to find couples to hang out with you and Kelly, and maybe couldn't quite match up? Was there a point where you did start to find community, and where did you find that at?
Yeah, we did, with just a few couples. It's funny. I'm in my late 40s now, so I've been working on it for quite a while, and there's only been, I would say, 1 or 2 couples, in our 21 years that we've been married, that we have found another couple to kind of do life with. And interestingly, one of those couples moved away a couple of years after we kind of started doing life together, and then the other couple, the second one, we're still close to today. We travel with them, and our kids are similar in age, and they're good friends. And so we spend a lot of time together. But both of those couples we met through church. I think for those of us who are active in church, getting into, some churches call it life groups. For us, it was Sunday school classes for adults. But whatever it is, there's 20 other couples or 50 other couples who are in similar age groups and similar life phases. And so if you just show up to church, or you show up to a ball game, you show up to a bar, the chances of you meeting other people who are in the same life group with the same age kids is very similar, right? Because you might have 50 people, but it's all different ages. If you go somewhere where they have the kids or the families all in the same age bracket, and kids in the same age bracket, then you have however many couples, 20 to 50 couples that you can get to know and see which ones you kind of line up with, and then, spend time with, go to dinner with. And just, I think it takes time. It takes intentionality. I like to use the term road miles, whether it's with couples or with, men building groups together. It takes road miles. It takes going through some of life's ups and downs together to really form those bonds.
Yeah.
It takes time. And so it hadn't been a huge success for us, but I would say we're probably in a small group of people who have found another couple or two that we can do life with.
Yeah, definitely. I like that term, road miles. Just takes time, and and going through those different experiences together. Life throws you a lot of curveballs, a lot of ups and downs, and going through certain things together. I mean, a lot of times men found community and they take themselves back to kind of their college days, right? I mean, I played on a sports team, and the reason why, one of the big things was I had that sense of community, and we worked hard together, we battled together, we won and lost together, and just going through those experiences. That's just an example. But when you reach certain ages, it gets harder and harder to find because you're so packed with family and business and everything else. So let's just talk about the business. So I'll just throw out this question. So business leaders and men, a lot of business leaders are listening to this podcast. So how can a business leader cultivate some sort of community or a sense of community? How would you answer that question?
Well, I think, the way that we've done it was through a mastermind, which I think is a great way to do it. I'm a fan of mastermind groups in general. We're in Collective Genius together. I don't know if I'm allowed to give a shout out to Jason Medley and Collective Genius, but so our mastermind group is a group of people from all over the country who are real estate investors. So it's people who flip houses. There's some commercial folks in there, multifamily, self-storage, but there's a lot of people who do single family like we do. And so by us all coming together on a regular basis, we get together once a quarter, we get to find other people who are in similar businesses. And so we already have that common bond. Mm-hmm. And then it's a matter of finding, other common bonds that you have with people. So for us, we're in Collective Genius. I think there's now about 200 members. And those of us who obviously are in a similar business, and then we talk to each other and realize that we have a common faith, so that we're all followers of Jesus. We kind of formed a group of us because we have similar interests, and started getting together on a regular basis, starting having calls every other week to further connect, not only on business but on personal stuff, on family stuff. And so that's kind of the intentionality I think that's required to build community. I think that every male wants community, whether they know it or not. And they don't know how to find it. I think one of the problems with it is there's not a clear definition for what community looks like. Mm-hmm. Right. So my definition of community might be a little bit different than your definition of community. And so I define it as people that you can do life with, other men who know me well enough to know when something's wrong without me having to tell them. So I have a friend who my best friend, John, who he always asks the question, how's your heart? And which is kind of an awkward question, if you're not used to it. And I'm like, oh, Kelly's good. Business is good. Harrison's good. He's like, oh, okay, great. Well, how's your heart? And so he's asking a deeper question. He drives to a deeper answer. And so constantly asking those deeper questions, he's pulling out, what really matters most, what's in my heart, what am I thinking about? And so I think it requires being authentic with each other. If I'm going to try to live on the surface and not share what's really going on in my heart, what my fears are, what my concerns are, you never get beyond the surface level conversation. Yeah. So I think as business leaders, we have to find other people who are in similar businesses or similar life phases, similar kids, age group, and you have to find people who are willing to be authentic. And I think you have to find people who are willing to be intentional about pursuing that relationship, and then be willing to put in the time, put in the road miles.
Yeah. No, I think you just kind of described your vision, which is my next question, the vision of creating a thriving community, just about being intentional and just going deeper. I mean, I think that's, again, why we create Iron Deep, is just to try to go a little bit deeper, because, again, the definition of community, a lot of people would say, hey, let's go see the Braves game, get some wings, which is some sort of sense of community, but
that's great.
But do they really know each other? Do they know when something's off or going on? I love that question. How's your heart? Because that's a deep question. And a lot of times we don't think about it. We just go through life. We wake up, we do the same things, and we don't really take a step back. I'm like, you know what? How is my heart? Why did I make that decision or right. get upset in that way? So that's a great question. Does that throw you off when someone asks you that? Because a lot of times, again, you said it's kind of an awkward question that you just get out there, and it might throw men off. But obviously you guys have that sort of relationship that you've had maybe the road miles, Right.
Yeah, we've been, we get together at least once a week for coffee or lunch, and then we talk on the phone probably another once or twice a week, and have done that for 12 years, 13 years.
Mm.
Um, so I would say that's kind of how I learned to build community, was from John. He's 67 now, so a little bit further in age than I am, and much smarter than I am. And so really he pursued a relationship with me after we met the first couple of times. For whatever reason, he thought that it would be a good idea to be in community with me. And I didn't know what that looked like exactly, but he continued to pursue me and reach out and, hey, let's get together. And he made it a priority on his calendar. Let's put it on the calendar and let's stick to it. And so I learned from him what that looked like. And then I was able to use that in other relationships as I've, tried to build community with other people. So we have had the time together, which has been great. But I think the question, it is a little bit off-putting. I think you probably don't want to hit somebody with it on the first time you go get wings together. They might be like, well, you're kind of strange. But I think, once you have had several conversations with someone and you've both identified that you want to find community, you're looking for community, you're trying to find other people who are in a similar life phase that you can do life with, and you meet a couple of times, then I think it's okay to talk about, hey, we want to be authentic. Let's talk about we can certainly go have fun and go to the Braves game or go have wings or whatever. Let's do that too. But sometimes let's have deeper conversations. Let's talk about, how's your marriage? How's your kids? We've in some of the groups that I've been involved with, we've had guys go through divorces. We've had people go through affairs and parenting issues. We've had a couple of guys who had to have their teenage kids kidnapped in the middle of the night from their house and taken out, to Utah to go through a 3-month long program. And those are real life things that happen. And, I think that this world and society is not set up to make family and faith an easy thing. And I think it's constantly coming at us. And so that's real life. That's what it looks like. And so having other men who can step in and, help you work through those real life challenges is what community is all about.
Yeah, definitely. So let's just kind of take a pivot here and talk about kind of the responsibility of a community type of leader. So I know that we speak and hang out with business leaders all the time. So again, we're always kind of leading things. A lot of us are driven individuals. So we're either leading our business, leading our families, or leading some sort of community. So let's say there's a man out there that wants to create more community, wants to be intentional about it, get some guys together. What would some of his kind of responsibilities, and what does that role kind of look like? Because it seems like you always have to have someone kind of leading the charge, or else, again, we just start drifting, and you don't drift towards community, you drift towards isolation and loneliness. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think what I've seen in my experience is the person who desires it or knows what it looks like, who's experienced it from other places, has to be the driver of it. Again, back to the problem of the definition. If your idea of community is, I want to get together once every 3 months and, have wings and we'll talk about the weather, and that's not real community to me. But because I've lived and experienced community, I know what it looks like. And so I think we first have to define, this is what it's going to be. We want to find people that we get to know each other well enough. We're going to spend the time together. We're going to get together once a week, or we're going to have a call twice a month, or whatever, figure out what those timeframes are so that you have something on your schedule that you can plan around, you can be intentional about, and then you're committed to it. So you plan other stuff around it as much as possible. Obviously things come up and people get sick, but you try to plan around it because it's going to take a while to go deep enough to have the kind of community that you want. And I think having someone who's experienced that in another group or with other men, or who has lived that, needs to then show other people how to do it. You can read books about it. You can talk about it. You can tell people about it, but until you've experienced it and know what it's like, I don't think you really have a true understanding for how to do it. Once you've experienced it, once you've gone through some of those trials that I talked about with people, certainly hardship in general, like you were talking about with sports team, when you fight together, when you win together, when you lose together, that builds community. And I think it's the same thing in life with within business and just in community in general is once you go through some hardships, the ups and downs of life over a period of time, it naturally draws you together because you've been fighting together, you've been winning together, you've been crying together. So I think that's one of the key things that I've seen is just someone to lead it who's been there, does it, and is willing to take the reins and run with it.
That's awesome, man. Good stuff, guys. So super important. So let's just kind of talk about the results. So you've had community in your life, you've not had community in your life, and kind of talk about the differences. Like, what does it look like when someone has community and they're going through life together with somebody else, with some other men specifically, or versus someone who doesn't have that? Like, what are some of the results that you've seen in your own life?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a game changer. I think it's one of the most important things that I've done in my life. Obviously, my faith and my family are important to me, but most important to me. But at the same time, we face adversity and we face questions and we face difficulties all day, every day. And so, examples of not having community are you're facing all that on your own. Even if you are a believer in Christ or a follower of Christ, you still, if you're on your own, if you're by yourself, the Bible tells us, like we talked about, that our natural tendency is pulled towards society or pulled towards this way of life and not towards God's way of life. So if you're by yourself, you're on an island, you're easy to be picked off. Much easier to make poor decisions, much easier to be, doing things you shouldn't be doing and allow temptations to creep in, which can harm your marriage, can harm your family, can harm your business. And then, having community and, we lead a community group at our church for an area that we live in, Kelly and I do. And then I'm part of two men's groups, which are mentoring groups. One of them has been getting together about 13 years. And the other one has been together about 5 or 6 years. The first one is all different age groups. We all met at church and are all friends through that. The other one is younger couples that we wanted to kind of share what community looks like. So I experienced it in the group that I've been in for 12 or 13 years. And then me and another guy from that group started a group for 20 somethings, late 20, early 30s who are just getting into their families and careers. And now we're trying to show them what community looks like. And they've bonded, because we've been together now 5 years, they've had road miles, they've had time to form those bonds. And so I've seen, again, examples of, one of the guys in our group whose wife decided she wanted a divorce and she basically left and he didn't want it. They had 2 young kids and he was so distraught. He tried everything he could to repair the marriage and she was just done. And I remember 10 of us standing around him over his ottoman. He was kneeling down on his ottoman and 10 of us were standing over him with our hands on him and praying for him. And when we finished, his ottoman was like covered in tears and, because he was bawling, we were all bawling. Fast forward a couple of years and he did go through a divorce. He met someone else years later and they got remarried and they have a special needs child. She's a special needs teacher. They have so much in common. So God repaired what was broken through that. But he would tell you today that he couldn't have made it through that time without us, his community there praying for him. Those were some dark times and he was by himself. And so we actually created a calendar where, hey, today's my day to call him. Next Wednesday is my day to go out to lunch with him. And Tuesday is your day and Thursday night is your night. And so we held him up during those times of difficulty. And there's lots more examples like that, people losing jobs. I can probably name 4 or 5 different examples within those 2 groups where someone has lost a job and kind of brought it to the group and shared the difficulties of that and concerns and fears over that. And we've come together and not necessarily given them a job at our companies, but pointed them in the right direction. And so it's things like that, whether it be difficulties or celebrations, when people have babies or sell their company or, have big wins as well, we celebrate together. We have a Christmas dinner every year together with all the wives and the husbands. We do a weekend trip once a year for the wives and the husbands to get together. So all these things that we're doing are kind of forcing us into that community. And it's been huge. I mean, it's a game changer. I wouldn't want to do life without my guys in my life. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, it's cool. And you just talk about all these different types of experiences too. And again, it just goes back to doing life together. You're not just meeting a gentleman like you mentioned, just getting a beer and wings so often, but you're doing life with families, you're doing trips, which is a different type of experience and stressors. And
Yeah.
you get the kids around, and that can be different, but you're just seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly of people, and you're letting people in, I think, right?
Yeah.
And that's amazing. And just the last thing is, what do you see just, I'm big, just talking about impact and making a difference in the kingdom, making a difference in the world. And I believe that we can all do it. There's so much better together. So what's your take on just making an impact and making a difference in people's lives when you have that community, when you can do it together?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's similar to our faith, right? God doesn't call us into his family so that we can just say, okay, great, I'm saved, I'm going to heaven. That's great. And I'm not worrying about anybody else. I think he gives it to us so that we can pour it out to others and share it with others. And I think it's similar, if you've found community, again, I believe that every male in the world desires community, whether he knows it or not. Most of us know it, certainly by our, early 30s to mid 30s, we know that we're lonely. Even if we're married and have kids, we're still lonely. Mm-hmm. And so we want community, but we don't know how to find it. So I think, people, those of us who have had community or have been in a good community need to also share that with the next generation. Find those younger guys who are going to struggle, either are already struggling with it or they're going to struggle with it, because every male, in my opinion, does at some point. So finding those younger guys and helping show them, not that you have to be part of their community, because, in the one group that I was talking about where we have the 20 something guys, obviously I'm in a different age group and my kids are older. My son is older. So I'm not necessarily going to be in their community. Of course, I've been with them for 5 years, so we have some bonds, but the goal really was to teach them how to do community, to show them how to be intentional. And they've picked that up and run with it. So I think that's our duty. Again, back to what I said when we started, God didn't put us on this earth by ourselves, and he didn't put us on an island by ourselves. And I think, his model with the disciples was that his desire is for us to do life with people, and to help each other through the things that life throws at us. And so I think it's vitally important that we learn how to do that. We're intentional to find out what it is, and then to not only find it for ourselves, find a group for yourself to be in community with people of similar ages and life phase, but then also be willing to pour it out to the next generation.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I love what you're doing, just pouring into, like you said, the next generation, the younger guys out there, and just the same as John showed you, right? So he's pouring into you, and now you're pouring into other people, and I think that's just what God calls us to do, to keep impacting people's lives. And my wife, we were talking about this the other day, like someone that just is all about just their self-pleasure and their self of getting in the best shape, having the best vacation that they can experience, the most pleasure in their life. That kind of is a miserable life at the end of it all. And I think that the most fulfilled life is what I talked about. That's what Iron Deep's all about. The most fulfilled life is really if you can give back, if you can impact people's lives, make a difference in people's lives, and we can do it so much better together. So it's just like, it's contagious, right? So Brandon.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's awesome, man. Thank you so much for sharing on the Brett Snodgrass podcast today. Any last tip for our listening audience out there?
No, I enjoyed it. Thank you, Brett. I appreciate your time. It's always great to catch up. I know we talk usually a couple times a month, if not more, and see each other on a regular basis, but always good to catch up and talk about. I know we have a lot of similarities and common interests, and so it's always great to talk to you. But yeah, I think again, I think community is probably one of the most important things. Obviously, why I shared a presentation on it, and it's one of the most important things as men we can do. So I would just encourage all your listeners to figure it out, commit to doing it. It's not easy, but it's vitally important to success in this life. So just encourage people to dig into it and commit to doing it.
Sounds awesome, man. Well, thank you so much again for being on the podcast. And guys, make sure if you're looking for a community and you want to be around business leaders of faith, go check out our website at irondeep.com. And that's a wrap. Brandon Rickman, thanks you, buddy.
Yeah, thank you, Brett.